Nuance with Nikki, the nitty gritty, even if it's shitty. All right, guys. So over here, we have adult conversations. Over here, I smoke like a chimney and swear like a sailor. So, please note that my content is usually not appropriate for children, right? So I'd really appreciate it if you didn't let the little ones watch. Okay, I'm kind of unfiltered over here. And so for those of you who don't know my channel, very often I try to be as, objective as possible, but I find it very hard not to be biased on the side of South Africa, right? So the thing is, I don't actually mind people putting out stereotypes about my country. I don't actually mind people criticizing my country. What I mind is when those criticisms are so divorced from reality, or when they're unfair, or when they caricature us and dehumanize our people. I often feel I have to speak up. As a result, I found somebody on the internet, right, who really inspires me. His name is Croc Turnbull, and he's from our friends down under. He's from Oz, okay, Australia. And he just reminded me so much about himself. You see, he's somebody who's never going to start a fight, but he'll make good and hell damn well sure that he will finish it. And I love watching him because as somebody from the Southern Hemisphere, I think Australians are the quintessential Southern Hemisphere people. Right? And he happens to be the quintessential Australian, right? You see, down here in the Southern Hemisphere, we tend to be a very candid bunch. We tend to be a very pragmatic bunch. The Southern Hemisphere, whether you're talking about South America, whether you're talking about southern parts of Africa, whether you're talking about Australia, New Zealand, or any of the islands, people come to our parts of the world for what? For our beautiful beaches. They come here to get away from the winter upstairs. They come here to have sunny Christmases in summer. They come here to experience our beautiful but dangerous animals, right? I'm sorry, Northern Hemisphere, we do have the more beautiful animals. But largely in our hemisphere, people aren't coming so much for our Sistine Chapels or our symphonies. Why? Because the Northern Hemisphere tends to be snowier, and a lot of those skills are skills that people gain indoors. It speaks of skills that take a lot of study time indoors. And it's not to say we don't have geniuses here in Southern Africa or in the Southern Hemisphere, but a lot of our geniuses are people who work outdoors: marine biologists, conservationists, healthcare. South Africa invented heart surgery, I know that's an indoor thing, but invented registered nursing. I don't know if you know that, right? And so those are the kinds of things that you come to the Southern Hemisphere for. And with that pragmatism, with that arguably brawny side of us, what you often get, and particularly in Southern Africa, and even more so in Australia, is you'll just get candor. You see, very often, you might not agree with an Australian, you might be offended by what they say, but what an Australian will never leave you is confused, and I think South Africans are very similar in that way. You always know where you stand. You don't have to wonder, okay? And I like to say, Bruce doesn't beat about the bush and Sheila doesn't shy away from the truth, okay? So we're going to have a bit of fun, guys. And I was wondering, since I'm always smoking like a sailor and swearing like a chimney, I was wondering if maybe I should be on my P's and Q's, right? Maybe my polite friends in Australia wouldn't like my 4-letter language. What do you have to say about that, Croc?
Well, we're not here to fuck spiders, so let's get into it. Okay.
Okay, so I take it I can just be myself and be real. Okay, but first of all, let's just imagine something for a minute. Imagine you're an Australian. Okay, you're minding your Australian business. You are keeping your Australian Christmas, right? You're not bothering anybody. Okay, you're just sitting there. And then out of the blue, from Rassie Rasmus's internet, right? There you are, you're sitting, pretty in Perth, satisfied in Sydney, mellow in Melbourne, or just anywhere else in Australia. You're having a hard time. You're having a lekker time. You and your mates, around the barbie, having a great time. And out of Rassie Rasmus internet, from left field, boom, comes this message.
If there's one country that you wouldn't pay me not even $1 million to visit, let alone move to, it's Australia.
Guys, I didn't get the memo from the National Lottery. Who's paying us $1 million to move to Australia? I don't know which South Africa she lives in, right? But in my South Africa that I grew up in, everybody has a cousin or an auntie or an uncle in Australia. Australia is the country that South Africans move to more than anywhere else in the world. Google says that it's the United Kingdom. I think that probably comes from the fact that there are so many Australians that are actually of South African descent. They've already got citizenship there, right? For you guys to know how deep this goes, right? I'm moving to Australia. Moving to Australia actually is a cliche in South Africa. It's been that for decades, okay? It is one of those cliches that you associate with Koogles, Koogil, Koogel. That is a 90s South African slang. A Koogel is a lady like this lady over here, a rich, new money lady who's here to show us everything that's like, like everything she's got, all her money and her shiny handbag. To give you guys an idea of how deep this runs, let's have a look at what Trevor has to say.
Different because a lot of people panic in South Africa. They panic, when it comes to our politicians because of this. They just don't understand them, especially around election time. That's when you see the most panic in South Africa. It's always been the case. Most of the country was overjoyed. A few people were worried. You heard them whispering, I'm leaving. I'm going to Australia, Mary. I'm going. It's been fun, but it's time to go, hey? I'm leaving. I'm going to Australia, Mary. I'm going to Australia. I'm going. Ish. How much is that to get to Australia again?
So to the South African mind, Australia is that place, that home away from home, right? It reminds us a lot of home. Of course, we've grown up with a lot of jacaranda trees. One of our capitals, Tshwane, also known as Pretoria, is known as the Jacaranda City. And Joburg even has more jacarandas, if I am not mistaken. There's the Australian bottle brush. I think we've also got one indigenous to South Africa, but the jacaranda definitely isn't. Okay, so we grow up in pieces of Australia, all the time. And everybody has an uncle or an auntie or a previous boss from Australia. But what gets to me about this, I'm going to explain later, because that region of the world, Australia and their friends across the ditch, by the way, if you're greeting us from Aotearoa, New Zealand, I just like to say Kia. That part of the world, Australia and New Zealand, is the one part of the world that I at least associate with not caricaturing us and not dehumanizing us. And I'm going to show you later on in this video this one conversation that one Australian man had in an airport in Cape Town years ago, a decade and a half ago, that actually changed the perception of how South Africans see themselves. There are many South Africans that kind of lifted their head a little bit. The conversation this man had, it was a small little passing moment, but it inspired all the South Africans that were standing around him, that he actually got people in the airport clapping for him. And it also inspired one of the biggest brands in South Africa, our First National Bank, to reenact that moment and to create an advert of it, right? In South Africa, you are often so used to being caricatured, of course, by America, but of course Americans do it to everybody, and they're always Americans ready to call them out, of course, by Britain, but of course they're always British, ready with tongues sharper than a guillotine to call their fellow the Britons out, and they also do it to everybody, so we don't take it personally. It's much more hurtful when the rest of Africa does it. They did it very recently, and most of the videos on my channel are actually about that. The caricaturing of people of their own race here in our country, and the demonizing of South Africans, the readiness to believe the worst about us. What people don't realize is not so long ago, South Africans were believing the worst about ourselves. We had an incredibly low self-esteem, and I will try and demonstrate that to you later. But it was an Australian that said, hey, you're going to talk yourselves into failure if you're negative. Stop it. And he so inspired us that we made that moment a national advert, and it changed our attitude, and it gave us a different attitude about how we were going to pull off the best soccer World Cup in history, okay? And so I just wanted to say that. And so what also gets to me is the stereotype she's going to have about Australia here in this video, an Australia that never asked for her opinion. They were minding their Australian business. They're all the same stereotypes that people put on South and Southern Africa, okay? And I just wanted to let Australia know that the only people in this world on a national level that I feel closer to than my fellow Southern Africans, that is countries like Botswana, countries like Namibia, countries like Lesotho, Mozambique, Eswatini, Zimbabwe, those feel like brothers. You in Australia, you in New Zealand, to me at least, I don't know how other South Africans feel. I can't speak for all South Africans, but to me at least, and I know to many South Africans, you guys feel as close as brothers. There's been a love between us that runs deeper than brothers, and that is because you guys, in my experience, I don't know what other South Africans have experienced, and I haven't had the privilege of going to your side of the world. I'd love to. I'd love to be offered that opportunity, but as I know you have no lack of South Africans in your part of the world, I know that we're like Alice, okay? I'll explain that reference in a minute to my South African friends. I don't ever associate your country with people who've ever made us feel small as a nation. I don't. I know Croc's going to have a jab at us here, but I also see myself in him, that he would never have started the fight, but he's going to make sure he finishes it. And I know in his shoes, I would also have dissed South Africa. Do you understand what I'm saying? As I said, I don't mind stereotypes about our country if they're founded on something. You know, if they don't come from thin air, and if people aren't just treating you like an afterthought and a notion in a textbook. Okay, so let's kind of listen to what she's going to say.
Like, I would not be bothered to move to Australia for anything.
Every Australian, every second, third, fourth, fifth Australian lives next to some Alice from Africa. There is no deficit of South Africans in Australia. Australia has never phoned me, and they've never phoned anybody and gone, blip, 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 blip. Good day, mates. Is this South Africa? Oh, yes, please, could you move over here? We're running out of South Africans. We're so concerned. No.
I don't know why she's leaving or where she's gonna go. I guess she's got her reasons, but I just don't wanna know. 'Cause for 24 years I've been living next door to Alice.
24 years I've been living next door to a South African. Do you understand? But as for this, Alice, I think I can collectively hear all of Australia say, Alice. Oh, that fucking Alice. Okay, Alice, take it away.
Here we go. All right. Sounds like someone got denied entry into Australia. Couldn't get a visa. Now they've got to be in their bond. All right, this is going to be interesting. Let's see what reason she's got why she would never come to Australia. Bring it on.
Because, first of all, Australia is so far. Like,
Excuse Australia. I am so. We're from South Africa. We're from South Africa.
Australia is so far from anything and anybody, you know?
Now, let me clarify. You're from South Africa, right?
We're from South Africa. We're from South Africa, the Southern Hemisphere. We have penguins. We have penguins. To get to South Africa, you have to fly across, Africa, the place with 54 countries. You have to cross 53 countries, all four hemispheres, because Africa is the only continent in all four hemispheres, right? Depending where you're coming from. You're going to cross at least you're going to cross at least from west to east. You're going to cross at least from north to south to get here. Okay?
South Africa, right down the bottom of Africa. The top.
It's in the name. South, bottom of Africa. Yeah, that's the one.
Tiny little spot at the very bottom of a whole continent, way down the bottom in the middle of nowhere. Okay, cheers. Just for clarity.
And for what we may lack in geographical isolation, we certainly for a long time didn't lack in political isolation. Nobody wanted to come here. There was a time when people who did come here were too embarrassed to have their passports stamped. So the South African authorities would give them a piece of paper to stamp that they'd slip into their passport so that they wouldn't get into trouble at the borders of other countries just for coming to us. It is why people of my age and her age for a long time didn't know there were more than two types of tea. Rooibos and gewone. We didn't know that there were more than two types of soap. Washing powder, Omo and Surf, those kinds of things, because nobody was importing and exporting to South Africa. My mom's Alfa Alfeto car, she couldn't get parts for it. because we were under sanctions. That is isolation. We grew up under isolation. And as we were shifting out of that time, as I said, it was an Australian man that helped us shift our mind and deal with the overwhelm of the task of having for the first time a huge influx of foreigners coming to our country and feeling like we were good enough for that. And I'm going to demonstrate that later, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Like, just to travel to Australia, you have to take days just to get to Australia from anywhere.
Couple of days to get to Australia from anywhere. What are you doing? Swimming here?
I don't know, maybe she's coming from the moon.
Like, so isolated. I remember early last year, my husband and I were in Singapore. In fact, we were on a holiday in Bali.
Bali. Okay, our closest neighbour. Australia.
South Africa. Bali is Australia's Mauritius. Bali is when South Africans are going to Mauritius, Australians are going to Bali, Americans are going to Hawaii. Okay, it's that island, that idyllic island. You know how Mauritius is called the Buddha Bahamas? Okay, but all of these things, I mean, they're small, they're incidental. It's the dismissive way she's gonna insult Australian culture when they never asked her to do that. Like, just out of left field. It's the dismissive thing she's going to say about that. And all of those stereotypes are the stereotypes that people have about us. It was unprovoked. It was uncalled for. And that is my actual problem with this video. Do you understand what I'm saying? But he's about to explain here how Bali is actually closer to parts of Australia than Durban is to Johannesburg. Okay, and Singapore, I think, is closer to Australia than Cape Town is. You take more time to drive from Southgate to Sandton, okay, every day, than it would take for you to fly from Bali to Australia.
Australia's backyard. Do you know it's only a 45-minute plane flight from Bali down to Australia, down to Darwin? 45 minutes. That's it.
And we're going to leave from Bali and go to Madagascar to finish off our it was like a pre-honeymoon holiday, like a family holiday. And then there was a cyclone, so we couldn't travel to Madagascar. And then we thought, okay, let's go to Singapore. And
Look at all the places I've been. No one cares.
while we were in Singapore, we met people who convinced us to go to Australia. And both of us looked at each other and we were just like, nah.
Did you hear that? That was a collective sigh of relief from all of Australians going, thank God she didn't come.
We have zero interest to go there. It is.
But who had any interest in you telling us all this and turning up your lip with contempt towards a country that, might I remind you, doesn't lack South Africans? The country that many South Africans have seen as the safe haven. Multiple reasons, nuanced reasons, but mostly the crime crisis, which Croc is going to address here. Okay, it's because Australia feels just like home, except safe. I mean, I can say the same thing about Botswana. When people ask me, why do you love Botswana? I'm like, it feels like home, but I can actually walk around in the streets at 6 o'clock in the morning. You know, why do you love Mauritius? It feels like home. Australia is no different.
So effing isolated, first of all.
You were just in Bali, 45-minute flight from Australia. And then you're in Singapore, which is literally a 2.5-hour flight from Darwin. And you're saying it's so effing isolated? Do you realise it's a 16-hour flight from Singapore just for you to get back to fucking Africa?
Can you imagine, like, the mentality of people?
Okay, so before we get to someone who is insulting the mentality of a nationality that has one of the top 10 highest education systems in the world coming from our country, and how about we don't mention our pass rate here? She's talking about how far. Okay, to get to London from Johannesburg by plane, it's 11 hours, okay? To get to Australia by plane, that'll take you 12 hours, around 12 hours, okay? So that's an extra hour, less time than it takes you to drive from one side of Joburg to the other. Okay, but now she's going for the mentality. She's going for the mentality of a country who had the second highest level of education right after COVID, when the whole world, including South Africa, was struggling. Take that from me. I'm a tutor of South African children. I was banking it because children were really, really struggling in school after COVID. A lot of children lost their foundation. Australia was thriving, while the rest of the world was barely surviving education-wise.
Who live there. Like, people who live in isolation, guys, don't take this for granted. The mentality of people who live in isolation also is
Imagine the mentality of assuming the mentality of someone just by where they live. Wow, that's pretty naive. And you've got to also consider that Australia, we have one of the highest education standards in the world. We're in the top 10 of the highest living standards in the world. You, my friend, come from South Africa.
And here's my thing. We come from South Africa, right? How many people say this kind of thing about us? Every single stereotype that she's putting on Australia are the kinds of stereotypes that people put on South Africans. And that's what gets me at this video. Unprovoked, uncalled for a country that never asked, and in my experience has never deserved it, has never treated us as less than human, has never made us feel our Africanness. And I'm going to demonstrate that later on in this video, how Australia said, hey, chin up, you guys.
It's far, it's isolated. Like, it just takes long to get there. From London, it's like 24 hours. From the US, it's just far.
It's just too far and too isolated.
Yana, it's just so far, and you are far from reality. I'm sorry.
Ah, shit, there's more. Here we go.
I am petrified of animals.
Who's going to tell her?
These are the most dangerous animals found in South Africa based on the amount of people they kill per year worldwide. Coming in at 10th place is lions with around 200 people killed per year. In 9th place is hippos with around 500 people killed per year. In 8th place is elephants who kill around 600 people per year. In 7th place is crocodiles who kill around 1,000 people per year. In 6th place is scorpions who kill around 3,300 people per year. Then in 5th place we have assassin bugs who kill around 10,000 people per year. In 4th place is dogs who kill around 59,000 people per year. In 3rd place is snakes who kill around 138,000 people per year. In 2nd place is humans who kill around 400,000 people per year. And in 1st place, the most dangerous animal found in South Africa are mosquitoes who kill around 725,000 people per year.
So never mind people, never mind hippos. She's going to talk about Australian spiders, right? When our hohos are the most fatal things here. Okay, and then just listen.
Especially crawling, creepy things like snakes.
Hang on, you come from South Africa.
And this is from the lady who talked about another country's mentality.
Where vibrant ecosystems welcome fellow adventurers to the wild and wondrous world of South Africa, where vibrant ecosystems and rich wildlife thrive. But among the beauty lurking in the shadows are some of the deadliest creatures on the planet. And today we're diving deep into the top 10 most dangerous snakes in South Africa. Buckle up, because we're about to explore the slithering dangers that can be found in the savannas, mountains, and forests of this incredible country. Kicking off our list is the infamous black mamba, one of the fastest and most feared snakes in the world. Known for its speed, aggression, and potent venom, the black mamba strikes fear into the hearts of anyone who knows of it. With speeds of up to 20 kilometers per hour, 12 miles per hour, this snake can cover ground in no time. Native to southern and eastern Africa, the black mamba's venom is incredibly neurotoxic, capable of causing death in just hours without antivenom. Each year, around 20 to 30 fatalities are recorded in South Africa from black mamba bites. They are most commonly found in wooded savannas, open forests, and even in human settlements, often near the coastlines of KwaZulu-Natal and the Limpopo provinces. Next up, the puff adder, known for its incredible camouflage and slow-moving nature. Despite its laid-back demeanor, this snake is responsible for more snakebite fatalities in South Africa than any other species. Its venom is a potent mixture of hemotoxins, which cause severe tissue damage. On average, the puff adder causes around 30 to 40 deaths annually in South Africa. They are commonly found in a variety of habitats, from dry, scrubby areas to savanna and grasslands. The puff adder is widespread, particularly in
And
northern
it goes
Kenya.
on and on and on. But of course, if you're a Kugel that is a wealthy South African living in an isolated part or living in a gated community or that kind of thing, most South Africans in cities and stuff, we don't live amongst our wild animals like the rest of the world does, right? In America, you'll just see deer right outside your walls. We have high walls, we have electric fences, we have gated communities, and all of our animals are kept in these massive national parks. We have cross-border parks with every single one of the nations that borders our nation, right? We have cross-border parks with Zimbabwe, cross-border parks with Lesotho, cross-border parks with Namibia, and so on and so forth. And they're kept safe there, and we're also kept safe. Unless you know how to live with animals, you don't live around them. And so the Kruger National Park alone is bigger than the country of Wales. So maybe if you're a Kugel and if you're so busy traveling everywhere else, and if you were sitting in the back of the class doing your nails, you wouldn't know that we in Africa happen to have African animals. Just like Australia does. People travel to Australia for the same reasons that they travel to South Africa. But in terms of dangerous animals, come on. Do I have to explain? Do I have to justify this with an answer? I suppose I am, just in case.
I actually have a phobia of snakes.
Newsflash, love. I don't know if you realise this, but South Africa has snakes.
And I hear ukuthi nje e-Australia you can just nje uthi use-toilet in your toilet, uvula i-toilet uhlangane no-snake ekujonge like this. Like,
What did she just say?
She said that if you open a toilet in Australia, a snake will just come out like this.
Snakes coming up out of your toilet like this. You can summon them. The fuck?
or spiders. Like there's just spiders creepy crawling in your beds.
Spiders in our beds.
Other things, you know, all those other like weird animals.
Yeah, like all those weird, dangerous animals we have in Australia, you know, like lions and hyenas and jaguar and leopards and, you know, water buffalo and hippos and black mambas and all those sort of things that'll rip you apart and kill you. Oh, that's right. They're found in Africa, not Australia.
You can come across like the whole fantasy of snakes around, which has never made my spirit rest. I don't like snakes, you know, I don't. And also, I can't get snake infested, and those snakes are venomous. It's not even like snakes that are, it's like venomous snakes. And then number 3.
Wait for it. This one's a doozy.
There's no culture. There is no culture in Australia. There is no culture at all.
She said it 3 times. She said there is no culture in Australia. And this is what gets to me. Okay, so Australia, I just want to apologize. I'm just going to double check. Does the internet in South Africa still work? Are we not somehow getting information about Australia? Because there was a little thing called Google. I'm just going to do a quick technical test here.
Australian Aborigines are the indigenous people with the oldest surviving culture. It is estimated that about 75,000 years ago, Aborigines left Africa and have been in Australia for over 40,000 years.
Okay, so this is my thing. And my reason for making this video is I've shown on this channel that when we as South Africans misspeak, it's up to us as South Africans to call them out. Okay, we've got a reputation for that as well amongst those who actually see us. And talking about people who actually see us, who don't caricature us, who don't do these things like put us on trial just for having an opinion, just for, you know, being called xenophobic by an African diaspora, just because we said, please stop poisoning our children, please stop stealing our identities, being put on trial by America, saying that we have a white genocide, being put on trial by the English just because we spoke Afrikaans with Bongi and Bonambi, being put on trial again by the American just because colored people exist, having Tyler called uppity, having American tourists, for example, come here, just look at someone and go, they're white, they must be racist, I'm going to show my moral superiority. The one part of the world, the one region of the world that I have never experienced do that. Maybe they have, but I've personally never experienced it, as Australia. So my stereotype, if you will, of Australia is one that's just generally positive. And so I want to show you, and I want to show our young people this advert from my early adulthood. This really happened. It was at an airport in Cape Town in the 2000s. We had just been given the 2010 World Cup. FIFA had just given us that, right? But this was so weird for us. It was so unusual for us. And so what happened was South Africa still had a sense of very deep inferiority. And so this Australian man called out South Africans for treating ourselves like a whipping boy, because we were not used to looking at ourselves as people that were capable. We had thought of ourselves, we thought of ourselves as the scum of the earth. And so that is actually what Nelson Mandela said in his original speech, his inaugurational speech in May of 1994. Let's hear what he had to say so you young people can get an idea of how deep our inferiority complex ran.
Never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity.
So what Madiba's talking about there is the moral injury. Moral injury is when you are forced to do things that go against your conscience. So South Africans had a deep sense of moral injury. He spoke about that first, moral injury and oppression. And the next thing he speaks about is the indignity of being called the scum of the earth, because we'd really internalized that, and we had a very deep inferiority complex as a country, irrespective of race.
And suffer the indignity of being the scum of the world. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. I thank you.
And so the sense of inferiority was something that all South Africans felt for a long time. The sense that we couldn't do anything right. And it's going to be illustrated here in this video, right? But we were not used to freedom and to democracy. We didn't know that democracy normally comes with things like corruption and all of these things because we'd never grown up around it. We'd grown up with propaganda. We barely knew how to get around and get along with people outside of our own communities. Many of us, I did, but there are many, many exceptions to that. And so anytime anything went wrong, we thought that there was something innately wrong with us, right? And it is only in recent decades, it is with things like how we stood together to stand up for Tyler, with things like how we stood together to stand up for Bongi Mbonami, with things like that, how we stand up for the pride of our nation, that we realize that we all love the nation. Each one of us loves the nation as deeply as the other does, okay? But before we were able to see that scent, it was an Australian man that gave us this. And this might seem like a small moment to you, but this was a big moment for many of us who were born on the fence, right? Born in apartheid but raised free, like myself. A profoundly meaningful moment, so meaningful, in fact, that First National Bank created an advert commemorating this one small interaction. Let's have a listen.
We regret to announce a 1-hour delay in Flight 219 to Johannesburg.
Another typical African stuff-up. And they want to host the FIFA World Cup here in 2010.
This happens everywhere, mate. It's unfair to blame it all on Africa.
Oh, well, our guys can't even sort out the crime. Service delivery is a joke, man. And don't get me started on corruption.
Well, if that's the attitude of all you South Africans, you're going to talk yourselves into failure. 4 years before the Sydney Games, the press were crucifying us as well. The media always does that. The Greeks had it even tougher. They ended up putting on a great show. I reckon you've got to stop whining and start thinking positively. 2010's going to be great. I can't wait to come over for a few games. And by the way, when you do start thinking positively, you might even win a few cricket tests against us.
Again, if you're born in freedom, if you're born with some sense of your own dignity, you might not quite get how profound this feeling is. So we're going to analyze this word by word. Okay, let's go again.
We regret to announce a 1-hour delay in Flight 219 to Johannesburg.
Another typical African stuff-up. and they want to host the FIFA World Cup here in 2010.
So what you're seeing there is the psychology of South Africans, that anytime we made a mistake, we felt like we were innately inferior and innately flawed somehow. Okay? We internalized every mistake as a character flaw.
This happens everywhere, mate. It's unfair to blame it all on Africa.
For many South Africans, that was the first time they ever heard somebody say, don't write yourself off, don't buy into internalized Afrophobia. Many South Africans, it was the first time. Remember, we were isolated from the world politically, mentally, socially, all of that. And he said, it's the first time many South Africans heard, hey, Africa's the same as everywhere else. Other people also have flaws. Remember, we've taken on all these labels: rape capital of the world, as if the rest of the world doesn't have rape. Crime capital of the world. And it's been South Americans and it's been Americans that have shown me that we have the same level of crime as anywhere else, right? That a lot of those numbers and stuff are puffed up. We can argue about that later. But I've actually had to learn that in very recent years.
Oh, well, our guys can't even sort out the crime. Service delivery is a joke, man. Don't give...
And our guys can't even sort out the crime. Many of us who've been victims of crime, particularly here in Johannesburg, have got that moral injury. We've got that shame transference. Like, we feel like there's something innately wrong with us. You know, many of us know about being held at gunshots. My first exam, my first drama exam at the National School of the Arts, right before that was also my first mugging. You know, before I was 10 years old, 3 Christmases at least, we had a break in. By the time I was 20, my nephews, 2 and 4 years old, had been held at gunpoint at 19. My dad was being held at gunpoint downstairs while I was upstairs. At 29, I'd been nearly dragged to a car by 3 men. But I felt like there was something innately wrong with me. And a lot of people put these stereotypes on Joburg. Even within South Africa, people like Cape Town and Durban put these stereotypes on Joburg. Even now that Joburg doesn't even appear on the top 10 list of crime-ridden cities in the world anymore, people still have the stigma towards Joburg. And it's true, there is crime that happens and people are often hyperbolic about it and they make us feel very, very inferior. And so for many of us, it was an Australian man that we first heard. For me, certainly it was like that. And that's why SABC played this advert over and over again, you know, for those of us who couldn't afford DSTV and Mnet.
We started on corruption.
Well, if that's the attitude of all you South Africans, you're going to talk yourselves into failure. 4 years before the Sydney Games, the press were crucifying us as well.
Again, for many South Africans, the first time someone from another country was saying, hey, we've been through this crucifying as well. We've been through this demonizing as well. He's basically saying, you are exactly like us. And that was unusual for a certain generations of South Africans to even hear.
Into failure. 4 years before the Sydney Games, the press were crucifying us as well. The media all...
For many of us to this day, content creators who speak about South Africa, whether they come from America, whether they come from northern parts of Africa, whether they come from parts of Europe, a lot of their rhetoric, a lot of their basic assumptions speak of notions of moral superiority. I've never been made to feel that way by an Australian or a New Zealander. Ever. Okay, but shout out to people like Just Chizzy, shout out to people like Lillian, people like that, content creators like that who have shown on my site here who are exceptions to the rule. Okay, people are normally given to caricaturing South Africans.
Always does that. The Greeks had it even tougher. They ended up putting on a great show. I reckon you got it.
Okay, sorry, as a half Greek, I felt a bit of pride there.
Stop whining and start thinking positively. 2010's going to be great. I can't wait to come over for a few games. And
the idea of hearing that someone said, I can't wait to come to South Africa, these days it's normal. It wasn't normal before 2010. And then what you're going to see here is a bit of banter. South Africa, Australia, New Zealand always have a bit of banter around our rugby. A lot of our rugby songs, when we like to sing other nations who are rugby rivals. And it's usually New Zealand first and then Australia second. But I don't want the young people to think that means that we hate them or anything. Again, it's just banter. We'll argue with each other, but you'll see many comments that go, you know what, if it's not us, we're glad it's you. Okay, because the Rugby World Cup or the Cricket World Cup, whatever, it belongs in the South. Sorry, okay, fine. Shout out to Pakistan and India, who are also very good at cricket. But that's not the point. It's not the point. The point is that there's a brotherly banter that continually goes on.
Thinking positively. 2010's going to be great. I can't wait to come over for a few games. And by the way, when you do start thinking positively, you might even win a few cricket tests against us.
So to anybody who may be joining us from Australia, I just wanted to say sorry that somebody had to act this way and had to, caricature you guys. I'd love to come to Australia personally, not that you need me or anything, but I don't know what other South Africans' experiences are. Mine has been that I've never feared that if I made friends with an Australian, that somehow I'd have to defend my position or prove that I'm just like them. And I've seen on Croc Turnbull's videos how many times people caricature Australia like that. And make Australians feel like they have to justify their position. They have to justify acting like Australians. I'm really sorry that it's a South African that has done that, because many people around the world do that to us too as South Africans. And yeah, it made me kind of sad to see somebody from our own nation doing that to you guys of all people, is all I wanted to say. Okay, so thank you, mates, for joining. I know it's not that serious. I know it's not a big thing. I just didn't want to say nothing. Okay, so this has been Nuance with Nikki, the nitty gritty, even if it's shitty. Thank you for joining, everybody, from wherever you are in the world. Hands off Australia, stop picking off them. Hands off New Zealand. Hands off South Africa or Southern Africa. And as I normally say, mind your business and let South Africans mind their South African business. And frankly, I'm going to add to that, mind your business and let Australians mind their Australian business. Have a great day, and thanks for joining. Chai for now.